Agatha Christie, The Mystery of the Blue Jar. No, Jack Hartington was distinctly dissatisfied with his stroke. Standing ready with the ball, he looked back at the marker, trying to gauge the distance. His face was a mask of pure self-reproach. With a sigh, he took 2 vicious practice swings, decapitating a dandelion and a tuft of grass, before finally addressing the ball once more. Of course, when a man is 24 and his greatest ambition is to lower his golf handicap, it is no easy feat to find time to consider how to earn a living. For now, Jack thought ruefully of the 5.5 days out of 7 that he was forced to spend in that reddish-brown tomb known as the city. From midday Saturday through Sunday, however, he devoted himself religiously to what he considered his true life's work. Eager to realize his heart's desire as quickly as possible, he had taken a room at a small hotel near the Stretton Heath golf links. He rose every morning at 6 to squeeze in an hour of practice before catching the 8:46 train to town. The only flaw in the plan was his recurring failure to find his form in the early hours. He frequently shanked his shots, and his game, quite simply, refused to come together. Jack gave a familiar sigh, gripped his club firmly, and repeated his mantra for the 100th time: left arm back, and keep your eye on the ball. He was mid-swing when he suddenly froze. The silence of the summer morning was shattered by a piercing scream. Murder! Help! Murder! The cry ended abruptly in a choked, gurgling gasp. Jack dropped his club and bolted toward the sound. The scream had come from somewhere very close at hand. This part of the countryside was relatively wild, with only a few houses scattered about. Nearby stood a small, picturesque cottage that had long caught Jack's eye with its refined, old-fashioned charm. It was toward this cottage that he ran. Though the house was momentarily hidden by a heather-covered slope, he rounded the bend quickly and, within a minute, came to a halt by a small, latched gate. In the garden, Jack saw a young woman and immediately assumed she was the one who had cried out. However, it seemed he was mistaken. The girl held a basket half filled with weeds. She had evidently just straightened up from weeding a riotous bed of pansies. Her eyes were extraordinary, like the pansies themselves, velvety and dark, glowing with soft lights that were more violet than blue. In her simple, deep purple linen dress, she looked like a large, living flower. Her gaze, fixed upon Jack, expressed a mixture of irritation and surprise. "I beg your pardon," the young man said, "but was that you just now? Shouting." "Shouting? Me? No, whatever made you think that?" Her surprise was so patently genuine that Jack felt a wave of embarrassment. Her voice was soft and pleasant, though he noticed a slight, haunting accent. "But surely you must have heard the cry?" Jack exclaimed. "It came from somewhere right here." She stared at him, her bewilderment deepening. "I heard nothing at all." Jack, in turn, fixed his gaze upon her. It seemed impossible that she hadn't heard that desperate plea for help. And yet, her composure was so natural that he couldn't doubt her truthfulness. "But someone was screaming right here," he insisted. "And what did they scream?" the girl asked. "Murder. Help. Murder. Murder. Help. Murder," she repeated mechanically. "Someone has played a joke on you, monsieur. Who would be murdered here?" Flushed with confusion, he glanced around as if half expecting to find a corpse on the garden path. He was certain a woman had screamed. It wasn't a trick of his imagination. He looked toward the cottage windows. They remained steeped in silence and peace. "Do you perhaps wish to search our house?" the girl asked, her tone turning somewhat dry. Jack was now utterly mortified. "Forgive me." He turned away. Perhaps the sound came from further up in the woods. He touched his cap and moved toward the trees. Glancing back, he saw the girl calmly return to her weeding. He searched the woods for a while but found nothing out of the ordinary. Finally, he gave up and hurried back to the hotel, where he bolted his breakfast and narrowly caught the 8:46 train. On the journey, his conscience began to prick him. Should he have reported the matter to the police? He had hesitated only because of the girl with the pansy eyes, who clearly thought he was hallucinating. He feared the police might think the same. Was he absolutely sure he had heard a scream? Trying to reconstruct that first, vanishing impression, Jack could no longer say for certain. Could it have been a bird? Could the distance have distorted a natural sound into a woman's voice? But he dismissed the thought immediately. The voice had been undeniably female. He remembered checking his watch just before. The cry had occurred between 5 and 20 minutes past 7. This detail would be vital for the police, if they found anything at all. That evening, he devoured the late papers, searching for news of a crime. He found nothing. The following morning was so raw and dismal that even the most dedicated golfers stayed indoors. Jack rose late, swallowed his breakfast, and rushed for his train. Once on board, he scanned the papers feverishly again. Still, there was no mention of any foul play. Strange, Jack thought. But it happened. Most likely just children playing in the woods. On the third morning, he went out early. Passing the cottage, he caught a glimpse of the girl weeding in the garden. It seemed to be her morning ritual. He struck a magnificent drive, and he felt sure she must have noticed. As he teed up his ball at the next marker, he glanced at his watch. Exactly 25 past 7, he muttered. Curious. The words died on his lips. From somewhere behind him came that same cry that had terrified him the first time. A woman's voice, strangled with horror. Murder! Help! Murder! Jack spun around and ran back. The girl with the pansy eyes was standing by the familiar gate. She looked startled, and as Jack reached her, he cried out triumphantly. There. Surely you heard it that time. She recoiled slightly as he approached, glancing back at the house, as if ready to bolt inside and hide. Then she shook her head and looked at him intently. I heard nothing, she said, her voice full of wonder. Nothing at all. It was as if she had struck him across the face. He did not doubt her sincerity for a single second, and yet he could not conceive how it could be so. He could not. Then, her voice reached him, soft, almost pitying. Tell me, were you perhaps shell-shocked in the war? In a flash, he realized what her frightened look meant. She undoubtedly thought he was hallucinating. The realization hit him like a bucket of cold water. What if she were right? What if these truly were hallucinations? Seized with horror, he turned and strode away without a word. The girl watched him go, sighed, shook her head, and bent back to her task. Jack fell into deep, troubled thought. In the end, he decided, if I hear that cursed voice again at exactly 25 past 7, it will be clear that I am indeed losing my mind. But I pray I never hear it again. He spent the day in a state of nervous exhaustion and went to bed early, determined to test himself the next morning. But he tossed and turned for half the night and, as a result, overslept. It was already 20 past 7 when he dashed out of the hotel. He knew he wouldn't reach the fateful spot by 7:25, but he reasoned that if the voice were a pure hallucination, he would hear it anywhere. Jack ran, glancing at his watch as he went. 7:25. From somewhere in the distance came the echo of a woman's voice. Though the words were indistinguishable, it sounded like a cry for help. Of one thing he was certain, it was the same scream, and it came from the same direction, somewhere near the cottage. Strangely, the sound almost relieved him. It was likely just a hoax. What if the girl herself were playing a trick on him? He squared his shoulders resolutely and pulled a club from his bag. The girl was in the garden as usual. This time, when he raised his cap, she said good morning with a hint of shy hesitation. She is more attractive than ever today, he thought. Grand day, isn't it? Jack said breezily, cursing himself for the banality of the remark. Yes, simply exquisite, she responded warmly. Good for the garden, I suppose? The girl smiled, and charming dimples appeared in her cheeks. Alas, no. My flowers need rain. Look, they are all parched. With a gesture, She invited him closer. Jack stepped up to the low hedge separating the garden from the links and looked at the flowers. "But they look perfectly fresh," he said, immediately feeling awkward, as if he'd said the wrong thing. The girl measured him with a look of lingering pity. "The sun is too bright," she said. "One must water them constantly. But the sun seems to agree with you. You look much better today." Her encouraging tones sparked a flash of irritation in Jack. Damn it all, he fumed inwardly. She's trying to heal me with suggestion. "I am perfectly well," he snapped, his annoyance rising. "Well, that is splendid," she replied brightly. He played a few more holes and hurried back to breakfast. While eating, Jack felt, not for the first time, the searching gaze of the man sitting near him. He was a middle-aged man with energetic features, a black beard, and piercing gray eyes, possessing that ease and confidence that marked a high-level professional. Jack knew his name was Lavington and had heard he was a distinguished specialist in medical circles. But since Jack couldn't recall ever visiting Harley Street, the name meant little to him. Still, the feeling of being watched unsettled him. Is there something written on my face that draws everyone's attention? What if this man, through his professional skill, had noticed that something was wrong with him? The thought made Jack shudder. Was he truly going mad? Was it a hallucination? Or a cruel joke? Suddenly, an idea struck him. There was a simple way to find out. He was always alone during his morning practice. But if someone else were with him, anyone at all, they would have to hear the voice too. Jack decided not to delay. Lavington was perfect for the task. They fell into conversation easily. It seemed the doctor had been waiting for the opportunity. Somehow, Jack had piqued his interest. It felt natural when they agreed to meet the following morning for a round of golf. They began shortly before 7. The day was beautiful, calm and cloudless, though a bit cool. The doctor played well enough, but Jack's game was a mess. His entire focus was on the ticking clock. He couldn't keep his eyes off his watch. By the time they approached the marker near the cottage, it was nearly 7:20. The girl, as usual, was working in the garden. She didn't even look up. 2 balls lay on the green. Jack's near the hole, the doctor's a bit further off. Lavington bent down, weighing his shot. Jack stood frozen, staring at the hands of his watch. It was exactly 25 minutes past 7. The ball rolled across the grass toward the hole, hovered on the lip for a second as if waiting, and then dropped in. "Fine shot," Jack praised. But his voice was hoarse, sounding like a stranger's. Finally, with a sigh of relief, he adjusted his watch on his wrist. Nothing had happened. His dark mood vanished instantly. "Wait a moment, if you don't mind," he asked. "I just want to light my pipe." They lingered at the 8th tee. No matter how he tried to steady himself, his fingers trembled slightly as he packed and lit his pipe. He felt as if a massive weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "Lord, what a beautiful day," he remarked, looking at the landscape with genuine satisfaction. "Your turn, Lavington. Carry on." And then, at the exact moment of the doctor's swing, the scream rang out. A high, feminine voice, filled with agonizing despair. "Murder! Help! Murder! Murder! Help! Murder!" The pipe slipped instantly from Jack's nerveless fingers. He spun toward the sound, then, catching himself, stared at his companion in utter bewilderment. "Not a very good shot," Lavington remarked, shading his eyes from the sun as he tracked the ball. He had heard nothing. The world seemed to tilt and spin around Jack. He took a couple of heavy, staggering steps. When he came to, he found himself lying on the turf with Lavington bending over him. There. Steady now." What happened to me?" "You fainted, young man. Or, at the very least, you made a valiant effort to do so." "My God," Jack groaned. "What is it? What's the matter with you?" "I'll tell you," Jack panted, "but first, I must ask you something." The doctor lit his pipe and sat back on the embankment. "Ask away." "I'm listening," he said, making himself comfortable. "You've been watching me for the last 2 days, haven't you?" May I ask why? Lavington glanced at him. A rather singular question. You know the saying, a cat may look at a king. Please, this is no time for joking. I'm not asking out of curiosity. It's vital to me. Lavington's face grew grave. Very well. I will be frank. Observing you, I judged you to be in a state of extreme mental tension, and I was simply curious as to what the cause might be. I'll tell you plainly, Jack breathed out sharply. I'm going mad. He stopped, agitated, but his words didn't seem to produce the shock he expected. He repeated, I said, I am going mad. Interesting, Lavington murmured. Truly very interesting. Jack bristled with indignation. Is that all it is to you? Interesting? Doctors can be so cold-blooded. Now, my young friend, don't take it so much to heart. In the first place, though I hold a degree, I do not practice medicine. Strictly speaking, I am not a doctor who heals the body. Jack looked at him with sudden interest. Not the body? The mind, then? In a sense, yes. But, to be more precise, I call myself a doctor of the soul. Oh, I detect a note of professional slight in your tone. But despite that, let us agree upon a term for a very real phenomenon that exists independently of the body. You must reconcile yourself to the existence of the soul, young man. Mind you, it is not merely a religious term coined by priests. It is what we call the mind, or the subconscious self. Choose whichever expression suits you. You were offended just now, but I assure you, it struck me as most peculiar that such a balanced, perfectly normal young man should suddenly suffer from hallucinations and believe he is going mad. I'm not in my right mind, that's certain. I've gone completely off the rails. Forgive me, but I don't believe that for a single second. And yet, I suffer from hallucinations. After lunch. No, in the morning. Nonsense, the doctor countered, relighting his guttering pipe. Impossible. But I tell you, I hear things that no one else hears. 1 man in 1,000 can distinguish the satellites of Jupiter. Just because the other 999 cannot see them, it doesn't mean the satellites don't exist, nor does it make that 1 man a lunatic. But the satellites of Jupiter are a proven scientific fact. It is quite possible that what we call hallucinations today will become established scientific facts tomorrow. Contrary to his expectations, these words had a profound effect on Jack. He visibly cheered up. The doctor watched him intently for a minute or two, then nodded. There, that's better, Lavington encouraged. The trouble with you young people is that you are so self-assured, you lose your heads the moment something happens that doesn't fit into your personal philosophy. Now, let's hear your evidence. Let's determine why you think you're going mad, and then we'll decide whether to pack you off to the asylum or not. As accurately as possible, omitting no detail, Jack recounted everything that had happened. The only thing I don't understand, he concluded, is why the cry came at 7:30 this morning, 5 minutes late. Lavington sat and thought. What time is it by your watch now? 7:45, Jack replied, glancing at his wrist. Then it's perfectly simple. Mine says 20 to 8. Your watch is 5 minutes fast. To me, that fact is extremely interesting and important. Yes, highly significant. In what way? Jack was now intensely curious. Well, one explanation is this. On the first morning, you did indeed hear such a cry, perhaps a joke, perhaps not. Every time since, you have simply suggested to yourself that you would hear it at the same time. I did nothing of the sort. Of course, it happened beneath your conscious level. When the subconscious joins the game, extraordinary things occur. At any rate, we cannot rule out autosuggestion. If that were the case, you would have heard the cry at 7:25 by your watch, since you've never heard it any later. I see. And the other possibility? Well, it's quite clear. This cry for help occupies a strictly defined point in time and space. The place is near the cottage. The time is 7:25. Yes, but why should I be the one to hear it? I don't believe in ghosts or spiritualism or any of that rubbish. Why on earth should I hear this devilry?
Ah,
That is exactly what we cannot explain at present. It is a curious fact, however, that many gifted mediums are, themselves, profound skeptics. These are people who take no interest in the occult and have no desire to flaunt their abilities. Some individuals simply see and hear what is impossible for others, and we do not know why. 9 out of 10 do not wish to perceive these things at all. They are convinced, as you were, that they are losing their minds. It is like electricity. Some substances are good conductors, and for a long time, no one understood why. It was simply accepted as an immutable fact. Now, we understand the mechanics of it. No doubt. One day we shall know why you hear what the girl and I cannot. Everything in this world is subject to the laws of nature. There is no such thing as the supernatural. But discovering the laws that govern so-called psychic phenomena? That is a daunting task. What should I do? Jack asked. Lavington smiled. From words to action. For now, young man, you should eat a hearty breakfast, go to the city, and stop cluttering your head with matters you don't understand. For my part, I shall endeavor to learn everything I can about that cottage. I'd wager the key to the mystery lies within its walls. Jack stood up abruptly. You're right, sir. I'm ready, but listen. Yes? Tell me, is the girl all right? He murmured, flushing slightly. Lavington chuckled. Aha, so you've finally noticed she's a charming creature. Come now, don't look so downcast. I'm certain whatever haunts that place began long before she arrived. That evening, Jack returned to the hotel burning with impatience. He had placed his trust blindly in Lavington. The doctor's calm, matter-of-fact acceptance of the situation had made a deep impression on him. Descending for dinner, he found his new friend in the lounge. The doctor suggested they dine together. Any news, sir? Jack asked feverishly. I've managed to unearth some of the cottage's history. Originally, it was owned by an old gardener and his wife. When the old man died, the widow moved in with her daughter. Then the house passed to a builder who renovated it quite tastefully and sold it to a city man looking for a holiday retreat. About a year ago, he, in turn, sold it to a Mr. and Mrs. Turner. From what I can gather, they were a singular couple. He was English, but his wife was of Russian descent, a strikingly beautiful, exotic woman. They lived a quiet, secluded life, rarely venturing beyond their garden. Rumor has it they were afraid of something, though we cannot say for certain. Then, one morning, they simply vanished and never returned. The local agents received a letter from Mr. Turner in London, instructing them to sell the cottage immediately. The furniture was auctioned off, and the house went to a Mr. Molyneux. He stayed only 2 weeks before putting it up for rent. Now it is occupied by a French professor, a consumptive, and his daughter. They have been there 10 days. Jack pondered this in silence. I don't see how that helps us, he said at last. Do you? I should like to know more about these Turners, Lavington said quietly. As you recall, they left early in the morning. No one actually saw them depart. Mr. Turner was seen later, but I haven't found a single soul who encountered Mrs. Turner again. Jack turned pale. That can't be. Are you suggesting? Don't distress yourself, young man. The fact is, at the sight of a death, especially a violent one, the influence of the deceased can linger powerfully. Suppose the surroundings soak up these waves like a sponge and then transmit them to a sensitive receiver. In this case, you. But why me? Jack muttered, aggrieved. Because you possess a mind that is rational and whole, not one that perceives things blindly or mechanically. I don't much believe in ghosts that consciously choose a spot to haunt. But my observations suggest that certain hidden forces are at play, forces that work blindly, yet always lead to a specific result. He shook himself, as if casting off a haunting thought, and turned to Jack with a smile. But let's put it out of our minds, at least for tonight. Jack readily agreed, but found it impossible to dismiss. Over the next week, he tried to conduct his own inquiries, but learned nothing more than the doctor had. He decided, for the time being, to give up his pre-breakfast golf. Then events took a most unexpected turn. One day, upon returning to the hotel, Jack was told that a young lady was waiting for him. To his utter astonishment, it was none other than the girl from the garden, the flower girl, as he had christened her. She was visibly nervous and ill at ease. "Forgive me, monsieur, for seeking you out like this. But I must tell you something." She looked around distractedly. "Come in here," Jack offered immediately, leading her into the empty ladies' drawing room, a somber space draped in red plush. "Now, please sit down, Miss Marchaud, monsieur. Felise Marchaud. Sit down, Mademoiselle Marchaud. I am listening." Felise sat obediently. She was dressed entirely in dark green today, which only heightened her exquisite beauty. Jack's heart hammered against his ribs as he sat beside her. "It is like this," Felise explained. "We have not lived here long, but from the first days, we heard rumors that our cottage, our lovely little home, is haunted. The servants refuse to stay. That does not trouble me much. I can manage the house, and I cook well enough." "She is an angel," the young man thought, falling deeper in love with every passing second. "Simply divine." He leaned forward, making it clear that he was hanging on her every word. "You see, I thought all this talk of ghosts was nonsense," Felise began. "But 4 days ago, monsieur, for 4 nights in succession, I have had the same dream. I see a woman, tall, blonde, and strikingly beautiful. In her hands, she holds a blue porcelain jar. She is deeply distressed, yet she holds the jar out to me, as if imploring me to do something with it. But alas, she cannot speak, and I do not know what she asks. This was my dream for the first 2 nights. But the night before last, it changed. The woman and the jar vanished, and suddenly I heard her scream. I know it was her voice. Oh, monsieur, the words were the very ones you told me that morning. Murder! Help! Murder! I woke in a cold sweat. It was a nightmare. I tried to tell myself it was a coincidence, but last night, it happened again. Monsieur, what does it mean? You heard it too. What are we to do? Felice's face was a mask of fear. She clasped her small hands tightly, her wide eyes searching Jack's for support. Though shaken by her story, Jack maintained an air of calm. There is no need to be distressed, Mademoiselle Marchaud. I know exactly what you should do, if you don't mind. Repeat your story to my friend, Dr. Lavington. He is staying here at the hotel. Felise readily agreed. Jack fetched Lavington, and within minutes, the doctor was searching the girl's face with a professional eye. After a few reassuring words, she regained her composure and told her story again. Most illuminating, Lavington remarked when she finished. And have you mentioned this to your father? Felise shook her head. I do not wish to worry him. He is still very ill. Her eyes brimmed with tears. I try to shield him from anything that might agitate him. Quite right, Lavington said gently. I am glad you came to us. Something very similar happened to Hartington out there. Now, I believe we are on the scent. Is there anything else you wish to tell us? Felise turned sharply in her chair. Of course. How foolish of me. This is the salt of the whole story. Look, monsieur, what I discovered behind one of the cupboards. She handed them a somewhat dusty sheet of drawing paper. It was a watercolor sketch, executed with a bold, careless hand. Despite being a mere study, the likeness was haunting. A tall, blonde woman with refined, un-English features gazed back at them. She was leaning against a table upon which stood a blue jar. Extraordinary, Lavington murmured. The key to the mystery must lie in that blue vessel. It looks like a Chinese jar, ancient by the look of it. It seems to have a strange, raised pattern. It is Chinese porcelain, Jack stated firmly. I've seen one almost exactly like it in my uncle's collection. He's a great connoisseur of antiques, specifically Chinese porcelain. I remember noticing that very jar. A Chinese jar. Lavington studied the sketch, lost in thought for a long minute. Suddenly, he looked up, a mischievous spark in his eyes. Hartington, how long has your uncle had that jar? How long? I'm not entirely sure. Try to remember. Did he buy it recently? I don't know. Wait, let me think. I don't follow porcelain much, but I do recall him showing me some recent acquisitions, and that jar, I believe, was among them. Not more than 2 months ago? The Turners left the cottage exactly 2 months ago, Lavington noted. Yes, I believe that's right. And does your uncle ever attend country auctions? Constantly. He's always at sales. Then it isn't beyond the realm of possibility that he bought that porcelain at the sale of the Turners' effects. A strange coincidence, or perhaps the hand of blind providence. Hartington, you must find out from your uncle exactly when he bought it. Jack's face fell. I'm afraid that's impossible. Uncle George is away on the continent. I don't even know where to reach him. And how long will he be gone? At least 3 weeks. A heavy silence followed. Felice's anxious gaze flickered between the two men. But surely something can be done? She cried in despair. Yes, I think something can be arranged, Lavington replied, struggling to mask his own excitement. It may seem unusual, but I believe it will settle the matter. Hartington, you must get that jar and bring it here. And if Mademoiselle will permit us, we shall take the jar and spend the night in the cottage. Jack felt a shiver run down his spine. And what might happen there? He asked uneasily. I haven't the slightest idea, but I am convinced the mystery will be revealed. It's quite possible the jar has a false bottom with something hidden inside. If nothing supernatural occurs, we shall work through our own theories. Felise clapped her hands. That is wonderful, she exclaimed, her eyes lighting up. Jack did not share her enthusiasm. The plan filled him with a certain dread, though he hid it for her sake. The doctor, meanwhile, acted as if his proposal were the most natural thing in the world. When can you get the jar? Felise asked, turning to Jack. Tomorrow, he answered, with no great relish. Yes, it was best to get the business over with. But whenever he remembered that piercing cry for help that haunted his mornings, he knew he couldn't simply walk away. To do so would be nothing short of heartless. The following evening, Jack went to his uncle's house and took the jar. When he looked at it again, he saw at once that it was the exact double of the vessel in the sketch. He examined it with scrupulous care, but found no secret compartment. It was 11 o'clock when he and Lavington arrived at the cottage. Felise was waiting at the door and opened it before they could even knock. Come in, she whispered. My father is sleeping upstairs. We must not wake him. I will prepare some coffee for you now. She led them into the small, cozy sitting room. Bending over a spirit lamp on the fender, she brewed a fragrant pot of coffee. Meanwhile, Jack stripped the jar of its many wrappings. At the sight of it, Felice's mouth opened in genuine amazement. Yes, yes, she cried, trembling. That is it. I would know it anywhere. Lavington began his preparations. He cleared a small table and placed it in the center of the room, arranging 3 chairs around it. Then, taking the blue jar from Jack, he set it in the very center of the table. There, all is ready, he said with satisfaction. Switch off the light, and let us sit around the table in the dark. When they were seated, Lavington's voice drifted through the blackness. Think of nothing, or think of anything you like. Do not strain your mind. It is possible that one of us possesses the gifts of a medium. If so, they may fall into a trance. Remember, there is nothing to fear. Cast out all terror, and drift, just drift. His voice died away, and silence fell. Minute followed minute. It felt as though something were about to break through the stillness. It was easy for Lavington to say, cast out fear. But Jack felt more than fear. He felt a mounting panic. He was certain Felise felt it too. Suddenly, her voice came, low and terrified. Something terrible is going to happen. I can feel it. Cast out fear, Lavington's voice repeated. Do not resist if something influences you. The darkness seemed to grow denser, the silence absolute. From all sides, a sense of inexplicable danger pressed in, seeping into Jack's very soul. He gasped for breath. Something sinister was enveloping him. And then the fear vanished. He was drifting downstream, his eyes closed, peace, darkness. Jack stirred with difficulty. His head felt heavy, as if filled with lead. Where was he? The sun was shining. Birds were singing. He was lying on his back, staring at the sky. He sat up, a painful throbbing in his temples, and looked around. He was lying in a small copse not far from the cottage. There was no one else in sight. He pulled out his watch. To his astonishment, it was 12:30. Jack scrambled to his feet and ran toward the cottage with all his might. They must have been frightened that he wouldn't come out of the trance and carried him into the fresh air. Reaching the cottage, he hammered loudly on the door. There was no answer, no sign of life. They must have gone for help, or perhaps. Jack felt that inexplicable dread return. What had happened last night? He hurried back to the hotel. Just as he was about to make inquiries at the office, someone clapped him on the shoulder so hard he nearly lost his footing. He spun around, bristling with indignation, only to find a gray-haired gentleman chuckling hoarsely. Didn't expect to see me, my boy?
Come on, admit it, the man barked.
Uncle George? But I thought you were far away in Italy.
Ha!
Never went. Reached Dover last night. Decided to drive down and surprise you. And what do I find?
You've been out all night.
Pretty goings-on for Uncle George, Jack interrupted. I have a most extraordinary story to tell you. I'm afraid you won't believe it. And Jack poured out everything that had happened. And God knows what has become of them, he finished. His uncle looked as if he were about to have a stroke. The jar, he finally cried in agony. The blue jar. What has become of that? Jack stared at him, uncomprehending, but as a torrent of seemingly incoherent words broke over him, the truth began to dawn. Ming Unique, the pride of the collection, worth £10,000 at the very least, an offer from Guggenheim, the American millionaire, one of a kind. Damn it all. What have you done with my blue jar? Jack dashed to the office. He had to find Lavington. The young lady behind the desk looked at him quite coldly. Dr. Lavington left by car late last night. He left a note for you. Jack tore open the envelope. The note was brief and settled everything. My dear young friend, have the supernatural manifestations ceased? Perhaps not entirely, if viewed in the light of new scientific data. Hearty greetings to you from Felise, her invalid father, and myself. We depart at 12, probably just in time. Always yours, Ambrose Lavington, Doctor of Souls.